Everyone, this is the final game I recorded with the Kara Mech Taura deck, and I start off the game with very few mechs. So I'm able to sort of mulligan into one and then replace into another and then draw one at the end of the turn. So I have three, but I basically have to skip my first turn, which against an Argeon deck is never good because Argeon is often playing a tempo type deck, and falling behind on tempo is not where you want to be. Now, I make a huge misplay here. I just completely forget this lion not only can attack twice, but can move twice. Just complete slip of the mind. So instead of playing my cannon in a safe location, I play it right here, which allows my opponent to just walk forward and kill it. And I honestly just did not notice this until after I had played out my entire turn. So, and this is one of the things. I think I'm sort of have a bias towards playing things on the bottom side for whatever reason. Whenever I move forward, I always play in this direction because on my first turn it doesn't really matter, to me. Which I don't know if there's any cards that actually it would matter if I played it, on this square, if I'm playing a 2-drop trying to access the mana tile. But I always just play it down here, just for no particular reason. And since my opponent hasn't made a play, it doesn't, there's no other real factors in there. So I think just kind of my bias towards playing things down here led me to just kind of play a little bit too quickly and make that mistake. So just things to think about. We all have sort of habits on our own play, and it's always good to try to think about them. So this is probably the issue with missing a turn, is that now my opponent has 3 minions on board, and this deck doesn't play any AoE, so it's not like I have the Frostburn that I could sort of catch up with. Not that I even get time to play the Frostburn, because I can't even access a tile. I can't access any mana tiles on this turn. So what I'm going to try to do is just buy a little bit of time, kill off as much as I can, and then I'm going to just stun this for a turn. And I think, this is a card that I was happy with when I played it. I wasn't, I didn't feel like it was slow most of the time, and I feel like buying a turn is often really powerful. If your opponent doesn't have a lot of, if your opponent has a lot of minions, then stunning one thing or stunning the general isn't necessarily that effective. But if your opponent doesn't, then, getting a stun off on their only minion is pretty effective. So unfortunately my opponent can lure and just kill off my mech, which is unfortunate because otherwise I could just run it over here and then get a nice kill off on this and just do some AoE damage. So I would have been in a pretty decent position, but instead I'm definitely still on the back foot. So I draw another cheap mech, and that's very nice for me because I have all the mechs I need right now, and I can actually just lay out the Mechazor because I can I can steal this mana tile. And one thing to consider against Lyonar is that they are one of the factions that is able to easily deal with a Mechazor, dispel it, basically. So I don't want to play it over in these corners where it won't be able to access the fight. I play it so that even if it's sunbloomed, which, ends up coming out, I'm still able to access the fight. I can run into this corner, and then my opponent will have to still address this, even as just a dispelled 8/8. So against Lyonar and Vanna, don't always go for the furthest corner. That's you have to think about where you place your Mechazor. It's not just an automatic aim for the furthest corner type of thing, especially against these type of factions. So my opponent can just kind of bum rush me and go trade here, kill this off with their Windblade Adept, and then deal 5 to me, which is definitely not a great situation for me. And they'll still have 4 mana to develop. So I'm definitely still on the back foot, even with a, turn 4 Mechazor? So that's one of the things. Mechazor isn't just an auto win. Now, I do have a good tool in Chromatic Cold. And I also have the Razorback. So I'm going to be able to do a little bit of cleanup here. And I actually get a little bit lucky, I think, because my opponent is going to... My first thing, I think, is going to Chromatic Cold off this, because I don't want to have to waste an attack on something with 1 health. And it has, and getting the Dispel eliminates that Tombstone. Now I'm able to play this down and trade in my wings on this minion and turn it into a Tombstone. Now I get lucky with the Tombstone spawn. That's really the way the luck comes in, because had it spawned, it could have spawned, I think, here, any of these spots. I don't actually know if it can spawn in the spots they were occupying, but basically I was able to get a spawn that my Mechazor could attack and kill it for free because it had the buff from the Razorback, and I could kill it right away. So I got pretty lucky there. And this game has less RNG than a lot of other games, but there's always going to be elements, even with any card game with just drawing. So sometimes you're going to have to get lucky, and sometimes you have to kind of, play into the different scenarios. And oftentimes you want to try to trigger the RNG as early in your turn as possible, so you can make your decisions with the most known outcomes. You have the knowledge of what, is most likely to happen. So my opponent's able to Holy Immolation and get me down to just 6 health and kill off my Razorback and develop a 6/4 minion, or 6/3 minion. So I'm definitely in a position here. And I'm going to trade in the Shroud because I think I can run away from my opponent here. I don't really think I have to worry too much about my opponent really killing me if I am able to just kind of walk back, especially if I play down a Night Watcher, because in that situation my opponent my opponent won't be able to just play a Tiger or something and run me down, and that's pretty much their burst combo if they don't have a minion that can get close to me. So now, one thing I think I did pull here was that since I wasn't going to since I was just swapping the Mechazor in, I should have probably moved it first, so I could have had this closer to the battle. My opponent's able to just Dancing Blades my Mechazor down, which is never, what you're looking for. If you have an 8 attack minion, you want to be able to utilize that attack by at least trading. So I'm trading in my mechs. I really don't need them right now. And I think right now, our only real option, it looks like, is just to lay down the Blood Taura. And the Blood Taura is going to be very strong. It's a 13/13 because of our Bloodborne spell. And it, and I'm trading into my opponent here because it gives me lethal with Chromatic Hold. Otherwise, I might just attack this Dancing Blades, because that way if it attacked me on the next turn, because, it's going to have to, my opponent's, going to have to hit me with 2 sources of damage to kill this Night Watcher. So, if I, attacked into this, I'd be able to trade on next turn, so if this was dealt with, at least the board wouldn't be crazy out of control. Even if this is dealt with, I don't necessarily, lose, because this actually can add a ton of damage if I have minions that can attack twice. And this can attack twice, so I could do 6 damage next turn. Or if my opponent got into range of this somehow, like say moved over here, and use the Dancing Blades to kill this, or something along those lines. This is a provoke minion, so my opponent can't really just run away. So my opponent makes a strange play here, because I think maybe they thought they could. I don't know exactly, because you'd have to imagine that hitting anything else with the Circle of Life, even hitting this, would be better because the damage doesn't actually do anything here. Not that it mattered. It's just something I wondered about what they were, what their play was aiming for. And it could just be a mistake, because we all make mistakes. So right here, I do have lethal. I can Chromatic Hold this, allowing me to attack the general, and then just Spirit of the Wild. So we played 4 games. I think we summoned Mechazor in 2 or 3 of them, and we've actually finished our opponent off with the Blood Taura combo in, I think, 2 of them out of our 3 wins. So it was actually pretty cool. I think Taura adds a decent amount to this deck because it allows us to play bigger, make our mechs bigger later in the game when they start being useless. just because their bodies are so poor, and it allows Mech to be a little bigger, which is actually significant. Having the 9/9 over the 8/8 is definitely significant in spots, and I think adding the second combo was pretty good. I think that was a really cool idea by Grinch, or maybe whoever he got it from. I don't know if he just thought it up, but I definitely got it from him, so all credit there. And I had a lot of fun with this deck, and I think it's pretty good. I mean, these games were all played in, I think, at rank 2 and 3, so it wasn't S rank, it wasn't high, super high ladder, but it was fairly high. And if you're still climbing, this is definitely something you could use. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you guys have a great holiday. I'll be back soon, I hope.